Hey, it's going to be another exciting Monday. Listen, Jordan Gathering is coming up. I want you to mark your calendars for it. On the 14th and the 15th, we're going to have some amazing sessions that we have put in place to be able to help you and your leadership staff. The Jordan Gathering is not just for church. It's for us to strengthen the families of our churches as well as our local families so that we can accomplish the ministry assignments that God has given us. So we have tailored sessions for our men, our women, our youth, and then even music they'll be sharing as well. And so on the 14th at 6 o'clock, there'll be a session for men, women, and youth. Then there'll be a service at 7:15. I'll be ministering on that service, and I pray that you'll pray with me that God will be able to share something with us to be able to make our lives the better and the richer. On that 15th, there will be a 10 o'clock from 10 to 12. There'll be a session, and I'll be teaching there to help us to know how to undergird the ministry that God has called us to so that we can get from where we've been to where we need to go. And then at 6 o'clock, we'll be right back for that men, that women, and that youth session. And then at 17, we'll be back to hear a word from God from one of my beloved sons, Pastor W.C. Simmons Jr., pastor of Holy Temple Family Church. You've got to be in that place. And then that Saturday, I'm excited because we're not having church. We're not having another meeting, but our marriage ministry is taking some of the couples out from the local churches, and then some of you who may even desire to be a part of that, to just have a time to bond and reconnect, to fall in love all over again. It's going to be an amazing time, and so meet us at the gathering. The flyer should be up, and so make sure you tag somebody, make sure you send it, and ultimately make sure that you're in the place. I want to share some things because this is going to be the heartbeat of our time together in the gathering. I want to talk about growing your team. The people that God has put in your hand, they should be better after being with you for a few weeks, few months, few years. You should be able to see some progress and some growth within them. And so I want to talk about growing your team real quick. There are 3 power principles I want to give to you. Number 1, if you're going to grow your team, you have to focus on their strengths. Amazingly, so many people, when they're trying to grow people up, they focus on what's wrong with them instead of focusing on what's right about them. There are going to be some things in all of us that will never grow. There will be some weaknesses that we'll never have, that we'll always have, rather. Some people will never speak publicly. That's just not what they're assigned to do, but they're a hard worker behind the scenes. Other people, they don't work hard. They're not good at being a teammate. They're good at being isolated. And so you can either spend years trying to force them to do something they don't have the capacity to do, or you can focus on the strengths that they had, be able to utilize what they were called to do, what they're able to do. Some of them are able to multitask, and then some of them are a jack of all trades but a master of none. Focus on the strength. That's an amazing thing to grow your team. Secondly, you want to flush out other synopsis. That means if you're going to grow your team, you can't listen to what everybody else is saying about the people that God has called to you. I have several people in my ministry that when God sent them, they were not the favorites of the crowd, but they had something, they had a strength that God has called me to, and now they're much better, they're flowing, they're flourishing, they're finding their future more evident, more near, because they have applied those principles. So I had to flush out what everybody else was saying. They said such and such is going to come to you, but they're going to leave in 3 months. Some of them have been with me 6 and 7 years. It's been amazing, but I had to flush out what everybody else was saying, because if God called a person to me, I had to make sure he called them to me, and then I had to be called to them to help them get where they needed to be. They maybe weren't one called to that person that have a negative thought about them. So please flush all of that out, the negativity that everybody's saying, because your assignment is to grow them up. They may not have had the capacity to grow them up, but you might have the capacity and the heart to do it. That's what you have to focus on. And then thirdly, you have to find what makes your team be successful. All of us, we learn differently. Some of us, we learn by what we hear. Some of us learn by what we see. Some of us learn by what we feel. And so when you have a team in place, everybody doesn't learn the same way. Everybody doesn't receive instruction the same way. Some of them, they can take public criticism. Others, you have to give them criticism in the private. Some of them, they need public affirmation to make them feel good about what they do. If you're going to properly manage your team, you got to manage the personalities of those people that God has sent you so that you can grow them up and get them where you need them to be. If you apply these principles, your team will grow. Again, let's recap to make sure you understand. Focus on their strengths. Yes, they have some weaknesses. Those things are going to come up. They're going to come up as you focus on what's right about them and not what's wrong about them. Then you're going to flush out other people's synopsis. What are they saying? Their thought. They're not this. They're no good. They're whatever. Don't focus on that. Focus on what God has assigned you to do. I always say this. The will don't need a physician. So God didn't call me to perfect people. He called me to imperfect people so that I can make their life better because of our connection. And my testimony is God's been doing just that. And then thirdly, you have to find out what helps them be successful. Some of them, they may need one-on-one time, so you might have to take your staff out. Other people, you might have to call and pray with them. Spiritually, they get activated in a certain way. I have some people that they could just receive a lesson and they're good. Other people need to fall out on the floor. Other people need to have a praise break. Other people need to have their hands lifted in worship to feel like they've connected with God. As the strategist, as the man or woman of God that leads that particular ministry, that church, or that organization, you have to manage all the personalities and figure out what makes your team successful. If you do these things, I promise you, not only will you be existing, and not only will you still be here tomorrow, not only will you still be here next week or next month or next year, but you'll grow. Apply the principles. Again, you'll grow. Talk to you next Monday.